All right, NBA preview for the new season. NBA starting tomorrow. I want to do a little preview. Kind of talk about some teams. One thing I don't like about the NBA as much as I like about football is the fact that a lot of the players that just got drafted, a lot of the players that I've been watching in college, it takes them a couple years to develop. So they don't really play a lot the first year, don't really do much, and it takes them a couple years to develop and stuff like that. But at the same time, there's players that are been in the league for 3 or 4 years, and now it's their time to shine. So we'll see how that will go. Let's talk about the Eastern Conference first. Let's talk about um, the Celtics. Celtics made a move here late to get Kyrie Irving. Had to trade, Jay Crowder. I think in that trade, there's a lot of talk about how Kyrie Irving for Isaiah Thomas, but I think the real key cog in that piece is Jay Crowder. He's going to be able to cover your Durant's, your other three guards of the league, your Melos. He's going to be able to cover those pretty big guys. It's a guy that I think LeBron doesn't necessarily like having to deal with in the playoffs, anyways. So now he's on the same team as him. So I think that's the bigger deal in this. So back to the Celtics, though. Kyrie Irving, I think he's going to have a pretty good year. I think he'll, really shine. I think, he'll be that scorer that Isaiah Thomas was for them. They don't really have that scorer. Um, some people that will definitely help him out, some other key cogs on this team, Gordon Hayward. Gordon Hayward came over this summer. I think Gordon's numbers will definitely go down scoring wise, but I think he'll surprisingly have a good amount of rebounds. He's 6'8", pretty good rebounder. Al Horford's not that huge on the boards, so it'll help him out. It'll help Al Horford out. Playing center, he's only 6'10". Jaylen Brown is slated to start this year, and I think that's a good start. I think he's gonna. He was really really talented at Cal, and last year. He got to play later in the year. They started to develop him a little bit later, and I think he could have a real good year this year. Him and Kyrie could really be pretty good. And then Jason Tatum coming off the bench, Marcus Smart. Jason Tatum's it's just his first year in the league, but he's a very talented player. One thing I will say about the draft class of last year, it really did feel like a very talented draft class. So we'll see how that goes. They added Aaron Baines. He's going to be a key bench player for them. Marcus Morris is going to be another good rebounder that'll probably come off the bench. And then, they added some other young guys, Kadeem Allen from Arizona. He probably won't play a lot. He'll sit a lot of bench. Semi Ojale, another guy that'll probably sit a lot of time. And then some guys that are they don't really play a lot, but they're kind of been in the league for a couple years. Shane Larkin, Abdul Nader. He was a really good player for their D League team last year. He's slated on the roster, and Terry Rozier is another good one. Talking about the same division, I guess you'd say. We'll go to the Nets. Nets are slated as probably one of the worst teams. They drafted players. They did get D'Angelo Russell from the Lakers. Lakers got rid of him, so they did get him, and then they also brought Alan Crabb over. They drafted Jared Allen from Texas. That's a good draft. Obviously, he's going to take a couple years to develop. Rondé Hollis Jefferson's another good player that they have, kind of a three-guard type, pretty good defender. He's still developing, shooting-wise. Isaiah Whitehead, another good guard that they have that I like. They picked up Tyler Zeller. He's a bench-type player. Jeremy Lin. This is a bad team, so he'll get to play a good amount. Sean Kilpatrick was someone that was really good at Cincinnati in college, and he's made it here at this team. Carlos Levert, he was a pretty good player at Michigan, and he's on this team. And then Timothy Mozgov, Nets took the big contract from the Lakers this summer to grab him. He's one of the highest paid players and doesn't do a whole lot out there. Maybe he'll do a little bit this year. Spencer Dinwiddie, he's a guy that's kind of struggled to get going, but he's a young player from Colorado that I do like. And then some veteran guys, big men forwards are Quincy Acee, Trevor Booker, and Damari Carroll. There's a couple. They did honestly add a couple of good older players in the offseason. Alan Crabb, Damari Carroll, and to go with Jeremy Lin, Rondé Hollis Jefferson, and then Timothy Mozgov and D'Angelo Russell. This is definitely an improved team. Than the team that they had last year. When I think about Jeremy Lin and Brooke Lopez was the main points of this team with a couple of these other young guys. So they did actually make a little bit of a move this summer to get a couple of guys, and maybe they'll be better than the Knicks. Talking about the Knicks, we'll go to the Knicks next. The big guy this year that is making a lot of noise, making a lot of headways for the Knicks. Because they just don't have nothing. Other than their guy Kristaps Porzingis, who's going to be the man for them for a while, and Frank Ntilikina, I can't even say his name, Takina from France that they drafted first their first overall pick this year. Him and Kristaps will definitely be the future of this team. To go, and then Michael Beasley's talked about he's going to have a big year. We'll see how that goes. I don't know how much you buy into that. Some other they got a lot of young guys on their team. You talk about Ron Baker. Hopefully he'll get some time this year. Damian Dotson from Houston. I think they drafted him this year. They added Tim Hardaway Jr. again. Willie Hurts-Nagomia is a pretty good big man that they have. And then, Joakim Noah and Courtney Lee, some guys that they got last year. Doug McDermott, Kuminska, some European dude that didn't do that bad last year. And then, they added Enes Kanter. With the Carmelo trade, Luke Cornett is on the team, big three-point shooting big man. Kyle Quinn's still on the team. They added Raymond Sessions, veteran guard to go with the Frank. This is just a team that they just kind of put together. Hopefully get the Knicks fans excited like they usually do. But yeah, this team's years away from being good. I see them being pretty bad this year. I don't see a whole lot coming from them this year. So to talk about another team from that division, we'll talk about the Sixers now. Now the Sixers, they've been building through the draft the last couple of years. Markelle Fultz, Joel Embiid. You talk about Ben Simmons, who I project to be a Rookie of the Year. I know this was his first year playing, so he will be eligible as a rookie, so he will get Rookie of the Year this year. And then they have Dario Saric, and then you talk about some veterans: Amir Johnson, J.J. Redick, Robert Covington. Those are some guys that to me were real. Some not Robert Covington, but Amir Johnson, J.J. Redick, some key guys to bring over in a time period where no older guys want to come over to the Sixers. They're finally getting a couple guys. They got Jacob Pullen on the roster, guy that went to Kansas State a while back, and Nick Stauskas, he's still here. Jahlil Okafor, still got him. T.J. McConnell, he's really filled in the last 2 years, and now he's got a spot on the team. James Michael McAdoo came over from the Warriors. They have Furkan Korkmaz, some European dude that's supposed to be pretty good. Timothy Luwawu-Cabarrot, another foreign guy, supposed to be pretty good. But yeah, I think the team is definitely going to be better. They're definitely going to be fighting for like a 7-8 seed. I think they're going to be one of those teams I feel like that's going to have a pretty strong starting five with all their young players. But then I think the bench is still going to be somewhat weak. So I think the Sixers will be serviceable, but a 6, 7, 8 or not in the playoffs at all type situation for them. And then to finish off that little division, I can't even think of what they're called, but I'm just going to call them divisions for now. But to finish that division off is the Raptors. And I think the Raptors probably are the second best team in this division after the Celtics. I think Celtics and Raptors are definitely playoff teams. And, Sixers are maybe. The other two are definitely not in there. So, you got DeRozan. and you got Kyle Lowry. Those are the two guys. And I was really surprised they brought Lowry back after they've done it a couple years now of the whole Lowry and DeRozan thing, and it just really they do the same thing every year. So I was surprised that they continue to go with it, but they're going with it again. And when you talk about after that, you talk about on this team, Jonas Valanciunas, a big good man, a good big man, I should say. And then, after that, they got a lot of young players on here. Serge Ibaka, don't let me forget Serge Ibaka. But after that, there's a lot of young players. You talk about OG Anunoby, someone they drafted first overall this year. Well, that was their first overall pick, I should say. Some other kids, Bruno Caboclo, and Lucas Nogueira are some guys that they have drafted over the last couple of years. They drafted them really young, and they're finally becoming of age. To watch these guys, see if they develop. Lorenzo Brown is a guy that he's excelled wherever he plays at. They picked him. Davin Berry, a guard, 6'4". KJ McDaniels and Alfonso McKinney. Alfonso McKinney really showed out in summer league. I think that's why he's got a spot. Malcolm Miller, a younger player, forward, 6'7". CJ Miles, a veteran guard, he'll be vital during the playoff time. Norman Powell, another guard, and then Jacob Pertl, someone they drafted last year. Pascal Siakam, he's from New Mexico State. He was really good. I remember in the tournament. I remember they started to kind of get him playing sometime last year, so he's good. Fred VanVleet was really good in summer league. Him and DeLon Wright are some good guards. So we'll see if they get any time. Now, I hadn't really heard, who is this? Malcolm Miller. Where is Malcolm Miller? Doesn't say he was even anywhere previously. But going on forward, going on into the East, let's talk about the Cavs. Cavs are going to be the Cavs. They're going to have LeBron. He's going to have. He'll play his normal. He'll be good. He'll be good in the regular season, doing just enough, but he'll really turn it on to the playoffs. So, we'll never really know what we're getting out of him until we get to the playoffs. So, he'll be that guy. They got Jeff Green, Channing Frye, Jose Calderon, Kyle Korver, just guys that J.R. Smith, Ahmad Sumter, Derrick Rose. They added a lot of guys. Isaiah Thomas, Dwayne Wade, Tristan Thomas, Kevin Love. Jay Crowder. It's like a lot of names. It seems like it's almost like they try to trick you and make you feel like, man, this is a really good team with all these names. But this team, I don't think, is really that good. They're gonna dominate the Eastern Conference. Their only test really is gonna probably be the Celtics and maybe if the Wizards get hot. But other than that, I think maybe the Bucks. Just because I like Giannis a lot, but they're gonna coast through the East. But this is not that great of a team. Once they get to the Warriors in the finals, they're gonna get shell shocked. They got a lot of names. And this is what they've kind of been doing each year. They're making you feel like the Cavs are really good because there's lots of names. But when is Isaiah Thomas going to score any points? Dwayne Wade, I don't really think he's going to have a phenomenal year. Tristan Thomas, he can have a good regular season, but we know he won't do anything once the finals come around. Korver will play good in the regular season, but we'll see what happens when the finals come around. Kevin Love, he's soft when the playoffs come around. It's one of those things they have a very serviceable team in the regular season, but once the playoffs come around, who are they going to put there? It's like they've got Dwayne Wade, J.R. Smith, Ahmad Sumter. Who is their two guard? Obviously Wade's their two guard, but who are they going to? It's almost like they have so many. It's like fantasy football. You have so many choices of who you're going to put in there. You're going to pick the wrong one almost. Jay Crowder, I think, is probably the biggest under the radar guy on this team. That's probably the biggest impact. I think Jay Crowder is going to be probably the most impactful player. He's probably one of the lesser names on the list, one of the lesser known guys, but he's probably probably going to be the most vital when the playoffs come around just because of his defense ability, and he's going to be covering someone really good, make it that LeBron doesn't have to fucking waste as much energy on the defensive end, covering a Durant because there's Jay Crowder's going to be on him. So I think he's the most key guy, and it pisses me off that they don't really talk about him as much. They talk about Wade and Isaiah Thomas and Derrick Rose, when this guy is really going to be the key. Going on later into this division, let's talk about the Bucks. Bucks, I really like the Bucks. I think Bucks could be really scary this year. I think they're definitely one of my. I don't know if you can consider them a surprise team because I consider them like one of the top 10 teams in the league. So they're not really a surprise, but I really like this team. If Jabari Parker can come back, get healthy, stay healthy. They were in the playoffs last year, and I think they almost won their first game in the playoffs against the Raptors. I think they were playing. I think their first series, and they didn't have Jabari Parker, and they gave him all they could handle. You talk about Giannis. He's the next LeBron James type. He does everything well. He covers up a lot of mistakes, a lot of holes all over the team. You talk about Chris Middleton, probably a top 10 shooting guard in the league. For sure, maybe probably top 7 for sure. Really good defensive player. Greg Monroe, who'll come off the bench. He's the center, but he'll come off the bench. Thon Maker, who they drafted last year, he's 7'1". He can step out, shoot threes. He's a good passer. I like his athletic ability. And then you got serviceable bench guys. Jason Terry, Televich, is what I should have said. Tony Snell. Tony Snell's a very serviceable, good defensive, very quick defensively. He's a guy that you go, how does he get as much money as he does? He's 6'7", 220. And he's just very lanky on the defensive end. He's really tough. There's some things that you don't understand about basketball, and Tony Snell is one of a key example of how you don't understand because he's really not that great on the offensive end. But he's very good on defensive end. Matthew Dellavedova, Sterling Brown, Malcolm Brogdon. Brogdon was Rookie of the Year last year. I see Brogdon having another good year. He's a guy that he's old. He's 24. He's already a man, so he's able to, and he was one of the best players to come out of Virginia that I've seen. It looks like he practices well. He does everything well. Looks like he watches a lot of film. I think he could be a really good player for a long time in this league. Sterling Brown, someone that they drafted, 6'6". I think he could be a pretty good player also. I do like, and then Rashad Vaughn, a young player. DJ Wilson, a guy that they drafted first round. I think this year Wilson can get hot and get going. And I think Wilson can really, if he can develop his game well, I think Wilson could be a scary player in the NBA. It just depends on how he develops. Okay, so let's talk about the Pistons now. Pistons made a big ad in the summer. They kind of, to me, adding Avery Bradley was really big to me. A very good defensive player. He's shown that he can shoot the ball on the 3 points, like the 3-point line. Behind the 3-point line, I really like Avery Bradley. I was really surprised that the Celtics kind of let him go, but I guess when the Celtics were getting the amount of draft picks that they were getting, and most of the players that they were adding were shooting guards or small forwards, so Bradley had to go out, and Bradley was probably about to have to get paid anyways. So it's one of those things. It was probably the smartest business type decision that the Celtics could make. So send him to the Pistons. We'll see what the Pistons can do with them. Now the Pistons, they're in a little bit of a middle area here, kind of like the Sixers. They've got a serviceable team, but they could be really bad or they could be all right. And the things that make them good or could make them all right, Reggie Jackson. I like Reggie Jackson. I think Reggie Jackson somewhat gets kind of blackballed and gets a lot of hate. Him and his head coach don't really get along. I don't think he gets along with coaches very well. But him in the pick and roll action and Andre Drummond, I think could be very scary if they could work together and get that figured out. Tobias Harris is a very good power forward, can play small forward type, can step out, shoot threes. He's a good player. I think him, Avery Bradley, Andre Drummond, Reggie Jackson, that's kind of like your starting group, and then Stanley Johnson, if you want to throw Stanley Johnson in there, but Stanley Johnson has not been good As far as as of late, as of yet, he hasn't panned out as a first round pick, a top 10 pick. I think he was. So he's a guy that is kind of a wild card, kind of someone we're watching there. Some guys that they added a lot of guys from summer league. When you talk about Eric Moreland, Dwight Buckets or Bunyams or Buckums or something like that. Those two guys are guys that really excelled in summer league, so they added them. Ish Smith, very serviceable veteran point guard. Anthony Tolliver, Bino Udrich. Those are some guys that are good bench players. They're really building their bench a little bit better than they have in the past. When you talk about Henry Ellison, Luke Kennard, some guys that they've drafted recently. Luke Kennard will develop all year. He could be a pretty good point guard. John Luter, Boban Marjanovic, a European dude that's 7'3". He finally got to play a little bit last year, and he was doing pretty good. Hopefully they'll let him play a little bit. John Luter is a guy that's kind of a veteran in the league out of Wisconsin. He's just kind of somehow makes it on a roster every year. He's a pretty good, middle range shooter. He plays power forward, comes off the bench, doesn't really bitch. So he's a pretty good player. Langston Galloway, someone else they added. I think he could be someone that kind of six-man type, come off the bench player for them. And then they have Reggie Bullock on their roster too. He hadn't really ever been able to get out and show a lot in the time that he's been in the NBA. Talking about the Pacers now. Pacers, they basically sold out this last summer, giving away Paul George. They didn't really get a whole lot in return. When you talk about Sabonis is a pretty good player. I think he can be. I see how he can be, the starter, going forward for them. But and then Victor Oladipo, bringing him back home. He went to college at Indiana. I think is a good pick, and I guess it's a player that you kind of somewhat need because you don't really have that guard type player, and he was very good with Russell Westbrook. He did play very good. He shared the ball pretty well, and he did shoot the ball all right. And so other things to talk about this Pacer team is it looks very, very different. Still has Lance Stevenson on it. He'll be serviceable. They've got an old man, Damian Wilkins. I don't know how Damian Wilkins is on this roster, but they got Damian Wilkins on here. And then you talk about Al Jefferson still on the team, another old man. And then Alex Prothris, someone that played good in Summer League out of Kentucky. He's on the roster. Joe Young from Oregon. He's been on the roster for 2 or 3 years now. I'm looking for him to maybe a breakout. I could see him being a really good player in the league. He was really good in college. Thaddeus Young is a veteran. He'll probably start all year or play a lot of time. He's a good player. Some other young guys that they got, Edmund Sumner, they drafted him. TJ Leaf, they drafted him also this year. And then Ike, Anna Buyu out of UCLA. He didn't really get to play a whole lot during the year, but him and TJ Leaf are out of UCLA. So this team's definitely rebuilding. They're definitely lottery bound. Miles Turner, I don't want to forget about Miles Turner. That's their best player. I was kind of saving him for last. Bogdanovich also signed with the Pacers. He's a good three-point shooter, and he's 6'8", so he can rebound a bit. Darren Collison also is back with the Pacers. He's probably going to be a good point guard for them. Corey Joseph, another guy that came over. So a lot of new faces on this team. When you think about the team they had last year, Glenn Robinson, Lance Stevenson, Joe Young, Thaddeus Young, Miles Turner, those guys are all there. Al Jefferson, those guys are there, but a lot of new faces when you talk about the Pacers. But I think it's going to be a tough year. I think Miles Turner has definitely a huge year. He's going to really show out, but definitely a rebuild year. Bulls, Levine already has talked about that he's not necessarily ready to come back yet. I think he's going to be a real stud, though, when he does come back. I really like Zach LaVine. I thought the Bulls, the Bulls knew that they were going to either have to pay Butler or they were going, and they couldn't really build around Butler. Butler, honestly, he was good, but it was a really good player. But at the same time, you could only put so much around him and you were never really going to be that successful. So and I'm still scared to see how that goes in Minnesota. I think something that you don't notice. I think Jimmy Butler's somewhat of a distraction or a character. I think that's something that you don't really see, but I think that's something that will pan out with Minnesota. I think he's somewhat of a character, someone that's somewhat hard to deal with behind the scenes. But okay, so that's here, not here nor there. But Zach LaVine and Chris Dunn are some guys that they got out of the trade. Huge picks. Chris Dunn. You'd say he hadn't really done much in the first 2 years or year that he's played, but I think he's going to be a really good player. And then they have some young players: Antonio Blankley and Ryan Arcidiacono, Jarrell Eddy, Cristiano Felicio, Jerian Grant, Justin Holiday, lots of young players. Laurie Marketing, don't forget about Laurie. That's their number 1 overall pick that they got this year. And I think Laurie is going to be a real good player in the league. Give him a couple years to develop, though. Robin Lopez, a vet in the league, always fighting the mascots, he's crazy. Nikolai Merovic is a real good power forward. I like him a lot. He's foreign. He's kind of an unknown, but I think he can be good. David Nwaba played real good in Summer League for the Lakers and got him a spot here. Cameron Payne, I think he's dealing with a knee injury or foot injury or something like that. He looked really good in college, and he looked like he could be a really good player in the league, but he's dealt with injuries, and he really hadn't done that great. He's been traded around a little bit. Quincy Pondexter, Bobby Portis. Bobby Portis real good. Somehow, for some reason, Bobby Portis lacks playing time, but Bobby Portis, in the time that he gets to play, looks really good. Denzel Valentine, someone they drafted last year. He's kind of a guy that we're going to see if he's really good or if he's just all right. He's kind of an older guy already, so he stayed 4 years at Michigan State, so he should be, more on the side of ready to play more than, trying to develop like one of the 18-year-olds, kind of like another guy they have, Diamond Stone, who's kind of bounced around the last 2 years. But, I mean, he came out after his freshman year. He was really good at Michigan or at Maryland, and I think he came out a little early, though. But anyways, so let's go on to go on to Washington, the last division of the East. And the Washington, they're a very scary team. At times they look like one of the best teams. And then when you talk about the fact that John Wall and Bradley Beal are just kind of getting older, kind of getting more developed. The big thing too this summer was when they went out and they spent the money for Otto Porter. They could have just said fuck it and let Otto Porter go, but they went ahead and got him. I think that was probably the biggest deal of the summer for the Wizards, just because to me it lets you say, okay, we didn't let one of our top draft picks get away. We've done good. We knew that we drafted well with Wall and Bill, and we think we've drafted well with Porter, and let's trust our draft process. Kelly Oubre's coming up. He looks like a really good defender, and he's going to get to play more and more as time goes on. Him and Porter are going to be really good together. Sheldon Mack is a guy that is coming up. Tim Frazier, another guy. He played for the Pelicans last year. They got Carrick Felix. I think he played at Arizona State. Not a bad player. And then they got Jody Meeks, kind of a vet. Markieff Morris still. Daniel Ochefu from Villanova 2 years ago. Ian Mahimi. I think they had him. And they have Donald Sloan, Jason Smith. Let's see here. Mike Scott. Devin Robinson, just a lot of some young. Devin Robinson's young, but Jason Smith and Mike Scott, some veteran forwards. Donald Sloan's been in the league for a while. It's kind of that top those six guys or whatever. They really don't have a lot of money on the books. They kept Marcin Gortat. So this team's bench is kind of weak. When you think about it, starting five is very strong, but bench is very weak, and I think that it's kind of tough when you've got Bradley Beal, John Wall, and then a $102 million contract with Porter on the books. So it's going to be really tough. for them to add some bench presence, but hopefully some of these guys come through. I don't know which guys it's going to be though. So that's what kind of worries me about the Wizards. If Wall and Bill and Porter and Oubre aren't the guys getting it done, who's going to be the ones? So we'll see what happens with the Wizards, but I think the Wizards are in a pretty weak division, so I think they still are first, and they're one of the top 3 to 4 teams in the league. Let's talk about the Heat. I think the Heat are definitely in the playoffs this year. They were right on the cusp last year. I think they made some good adds this summer. I think Bam Adebayo will be a guy that is more serviceable sooner than later. You talk about how good James Johnson was last year. He played very good last year. And Goran Dragic is a guy that he seems like he sucks, or he's really just all right. He gets a lot of hype, but he is very good. He works very well with Hassan Whiteside. That's a good combination of them two. And you talk about Justice Winslow has been hurt most of the time that he has played for the Heat, and so I think he could come out and have a big year. Josh Richardson has been good in the time that he's played. We'll see if he can continue to play. Dion Waiters, definitely a dark horse. Star in the league right now, gets a lot of love from the Heat fans, and I don't really know what to make of him so far. We'll see if he can continue to play good. And then Tyler Johnson's a guy that doesn't get a lot of love, but he's honestly a pretty good defender, pretty good player. And some other guys, Jordan Mickey, Kelly Olynyk, Rodney McGruder, Okra White. Okra White was real good in Summer League, but Mickey, McGruder, Olynyk, Hammonds, Wayne Ellington. They still have Udonis Haslem. They have a good mix of veteran and young talent. And we'll see what happens with this team. I think their bench is somewhat. It's not as weak as the Wizards bench, but their bench is somewhat a little bit of a scare here. And if Whiteside's having issues with fouls, I don't know how serviceable Olynyk can be long term in a game. So I think this is definitely a playoff team. 5, 6, 7 around there. But we'll see what happens out of them. Hornets are definitely a dark horse. Not necessarily. When I say dark horse, a lot of it. Basically the Cavs and the Celtics are going to play in the Eastern Conference Finals. Like, that's pretty already predetermined. We're not really wondering about that. That's kind of where we're at. Final 4 teams, I'd say Bucks, Wizards, Cavs, Celtics, if I was saying it today. If there's any key injury, major injuries that throw anything off. But the Hornets are definitely a serviceable team. I think they're definitely a playoff team. Cody Zeller, underrated power forward. When he's not in the lineup, they don't really win. Very underrated. Marvin Williams, he continues to play every year. Marvin Williams looks like a very good power forward type. He can play small forward. Veteran in the league. Kemba Walker's definitely your star for them, and then you talk about Nicholas Batum. Nicholas Batum's having some issues, I think, with the elbow or something right now, but he'll be back for the majority of the year. Good guard, pretty good shooter. He's done good with Kemba Walker. And then they added Dwight Howard this summer, which will be good. A good presence. He's really changed his game over the last couple of years. He doesn't really focus on the offensive end. He's very, very much a defensive anchor. And then let's talk about some of the young guys. Frank Kaminsky, who they drafted a year or two ago. Treveon Graham, a guy out of VCU, who I really liked. I think he went undrafted. He's really worked his way to get on a team. He's played Summer League, I think, 2 or 3 years in a row. I think he's a pretty good player off the bench. Dwayne Bacon and Malik Monk. Dwayne Bacon, to me, was a steal. They got him in the second round. I thought he was a first-round pick. This kid, when he got hot in games, he was scary. He could take over games. So I think they got a real steal with him. And then, obviously Malik Monk is a very good player, going to be a star in the league before we know it. Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, hopefully he can stay healthy. He should be a serviceable bench guy. Jeremy Lamb, another serviceable bench guy. And then Johnny O'Brien, a good big man. Marcus Page is also on this team. But Kemba Walker is definitely the main star. And we'll see I don't expect a lot out of Dwayne Bacon and Malik Monk this year. I will definitely see him in spurts. But I think Kemba Walker definitely. I think that it definitely leads them to a playoff berth this year. And let's talk about the Hawks now. Hawks, I think Hawks are in definitely a bit of a rebuild now. I really like their point guard, Dennis Schroeder. He's one of my favorite players in the league. He's really small, but he's really a good player. The one thing that might get this team over the top, if they want to creep in for an 8, a 7 or 8 seed in the playoffs, I think it's going to be defensively. You got Taurean Prince. I think Taurean Prince is definitely going to – this is a year he's going to get to play a lot. They're definitely developing this team. This isn't a bad team per se, future-wise. Taurean Prince and DeAndre Bembry are 2 guys that are going to excel this year, are going to really develop this year. Kent Bazemore, Marco Bellinelli, John Collins is the rookie they got. I think he's going to be really good in the future. He's going to struggle probably this year at times, but hopefully they let him play. Tyler Dorsey, another good player that they got. Malcolm Delaney out of Virginia Tech, a couple years, he's not bad. Dwayne Dedman, a good defensive center. Miles Plumlee, another good defensive center. And they got Ersan Ilyasova. He's really not that bad of a forward if they keep him, if they don't trade him. He got traded like 2 or 3 times last year. This team's it's gonna be tough for this team, but I do like Dennis Schroeder a lot. I think maybe he's gonna struggle because he doesn't have as much talent as he has had around him in the past, but we'll see what happens out of them. Okay, so let's talk about the Magic now. The Magic are usually pretty bad. And I think they'll probably be around the same. When you talk about a star on their team, you're talking about Aaron Gordon or Evan Fournier. Evan Fournier is a very good shooter, but to me he can't be a star. He can be a good shooter for your team, but just not the star. This team just doesn't have enough talent for me. Aaron Gordon's a good player, and he's got some good talent. And Nikolai Vujicic is another really good player on this team. He kind of gets overshadowed at times. Very good center. To me, he's one of those guys. If he played on a good team, he would play his role, and you would notice how important he was. But in the situation that he is, where he's on a bad team, his numbers and what he does kind of gets overshadowed. They got Terrence Ross. I think Terrence Ross can definitely take over and be a real good player for them. I think he had issues just being overshadowed as a Raptor in Toronto. Mario Hezonja, we'll see if Mario Hezonja develops. Another guy, Jonathan Isaac and Wesley Awundalo are the guys that they drafted this year in the draft. I really like Jonathan Isaac. He's a specimen to me. I think that he could be very, very talented in the years to come. He's 6'10", but he's got a body that's more like a small forward. So we'll see what happens with him. Wesley Awundalo is a little bit of an older player out of Kansas State. I liked what I saw out of him. They also added Jonathan Simmons this summer, which should be another good pick. Aaron Afalo, DJ Augustine, Bismack Boyambo, I should say, and then Sheldon Mack. They added a lot of good veterans. They definitely did a good job building this roster. And they might be a bit of a surprise. Kim Birch is also a center that they have out of Nevada. I don't know if they just drafted him, but he's on the roster. So maybe this team is better than the Hawks team, but I don't know. I don't know if they can get to the playoffs. I think this is definitely another year of Magic not in the playoffs. But yeah, so that's the Eastern Conference.